This symposium is the culmination of a 2-year public information campaign to make the case for the liberal arts and independent higher education. And the campaign, which was developed by CIC under the leadership of Georgia Nugent, has included traditional media, social media, alumni testimonials, empirical research, and this symposium.
This gathering is intended as a very tangible answer to the question we often hear today: what can you do with a liberal arts education? The men and women that we will hear today provide not only varied but inspiring answers to that question through their accomplishments, their lives, the values they exemplify. What can you do with a liberal arts education? Obviously, the answer is anything you set your mind to.
Accepting these personal and societal benefits, the more relevant question about a liberal arts education is, why is it that we need to keep reminding ourselves, and more to the point, keep reminding the public of its value?
It's our hope that this information, this data, these stories will be kind of tools for you to make the case in your various fields.
When you're 1 in 12 or 1 in 20 or 1 in 6, or in my case, even one-on-one with a professor at a college campus, you get insights and nurturing and motivation and encouragement unlike anything you've ever had before. And so not only are you stimulated, but you're inspired to want to continue doing what you're doing, and your passions are fueled as opposed to encumbered. And I think, not to tarnish any other type of learning institution, at a more impersonal learning environment, that's not possible.
I don't think that you can put a price on exposure. I don't think you can put a price on experimentation. I don't think you can put a price on acquisition of a love for lifelong learning. And it's not just about going to college to get a job. I don't think it really ever has been. For me, it was sort of pulling back the covers on the world. I was a kid who grew up in Cleveland. I didn't know anyone who had gone to college. I didn't know anyone who had been a journalist. I didn't even know how to apply to college, and I was an honor student. I like to say that I didn't choose Ohio Wesleyan. Ohio Wesleyan chose me. And fortunately, it did.
It's investing in building community among people. And a liberal arts education, liberal arts college itself, is an intimate setting in which people from diverse backgrounds can come together and build relationships with them. You don't need to do that or you can't, or it's difficult to do that in a large research university, because you don't have those intimate settings for individuals.
We often talk about what we're discussing today as the liberal arts. But we all know what we're really talking about is the liberal arts and sciences and the social sciences. Too often, our types of institutions are viewed as being orthogonal to producing leaders in the STEM field, and orthogonal to what we would call the hard sciences. And of course, that's not the case.
When I was at Stetson, I felt like the whole university was my playground. I wouldn't have said it that way at the time, but looking back, that's the way it was. I took numerous religion and philosophy courses because I'd been raised in that kind of culture in the South, and I was really interested in how my experience, in a church pew or something related to my experience in a laboratory. And, I was constantly trying to put those ideas together in my own head. I took a senior level Shakespeare course during my senior year in college. And I took psychology courses, and I really, to my chairman's disappointment in physics, I graduated with just the bare minimum number of courses required for the physics major, because I had sort of decided I wanted to go into biology, and I started taking biology and chemistry courses. So really, I was a general science major with a healthy dose of general university, and I do think that has served me extremely well.
When I think about liberal education involving multiple disciplines, it isn't that you have multiple subject matters. At least for me, it was about going through the experience of comparing and contrasting different modes of inquiry and saying, when is this useful and in what ways is this useful? And when people ask me now, what can you do with a liberal arts degree, I often say be your own boss, because what you learn is how to inquire into some particular situation and figure out how you're going to operate there when there's no one in the world who can tell you what to do. And that was extremely important for me in the organization I helped start later.
When both of you were in college, did you feel like you had to choose between liberal arts coursework and developing more technical skills? Was that a choice that you had to sort of make, or did you acquire these skills later on?
There is a certain amount of, sort of perfunctory, prerequisite amount of technical knowledge that you need to be an engineer. That being said, when I graduated in 2007, the technology that I work with, the platform I work with on a daily basis, the iPhone hadn't even come out yet. So there's also this sort of, continued learning and sort of like this ability to self-educate, which I use and I continue to use as new technologies come out.
I think there's some hazards in getting a liberal arts degree. I mean, I think it teaches it teaches a fitness of oscillating between things. Going from a physics class to a fine arts class where you're doing pottery to going to choir for an hour and a half every day to going and playing, running cross country or working at the newspaper, or it teaches you that you can be interested in a lot of things and be engaged with a lot of people and a lot of causes, and maybe the confidence that you can make a difference in a lot of those places, which is a sort of a risk. I don't know if you experience this risk, but it just means, it means that the rest of my life I'm sort of hyper empowered to think that I can do so many things.
We all understand that a life of responsibility and leadership grows right out of the very core capacities that we aim for in liberal education. I remember that one of the Skidmore a person I met as a past Skidmore trustee, Harry Quadracci, was both president, founder of Quad Graphics, the largest printer and publisher in the country, and also head of business for social responsibility. And he once said that he found that as people rose in the organization, they could move up as far as middle management with just technical capacities. But once he and they wanted to move beyond middle management, they literally needed to have the perspectives, the learning that we think of as liberal education.
I do tell people all the time that the liberal arts approach is great if you want to rise above the rat race. And if you want technical training and to enter into the rat race, then pursue technical training alone. And if you want to rise above the rat race, pursue a more liberal style of education.
And so when I interview people that are coming in or mentoring people that are ready to start out, the biggest thing you always have is the fear factor. Well, I've got to go do this job because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I won't make it. I'm afraid that I will fail. I'm afraid that something else. And that's the worst employee that you can have in business. Because what you need someone who is a calculated risk taker. You need someone who can learn and expand. And when you come and tap them on the shoulder and say, I need you to go open up China for me, they say, okay, I don't know Chinese, but I'll be willing to learn and I'll take off and I'll go. And that's what liberal arts does, is it encourages very calculated risk-taking with skill sets that don't give you fish, but they teach you how to fish.
Well, today, people have a lot of different jobs, and I've had a lot of different jobs. I've worked in private practice as a lawyer. I worked as a lawyer in an investment management firm. I worked in a healthcare services firm, and ultimately ended up in an internet firm. And I think the preparation that I got at college put me in a position where I was able to quickly learn what these new businesses and what these new industries were about. And when you think about trying to understand an industry or a business, the things that you have to deal with cut across many, many disciplines.
Like now I sing in the Boston Symphony with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I have interests in nonprofit boards. I'm helping startups. I'm investing in other startups. I'm going out and raising money. It's a mess, right? This sort of teaches you this sort of schizophrenia, to put it negatively, that you can have this skill or adeptness at oscillating between all of these roles in life. I mean, you could argue that's the good life, right? Oscillating between learning and teaching at the same time, and raising money and investing and mentoring and being a mentee. Maybe that sort of oscillation is the good life.
I mean, I wake up every day and have to, not every single day, but every week or pretty often, and I have to create something out of nothing. If I don't come up with ideas, and if I don't go out and ask questions, I don't set up interviews, nothing's going to happen. I don't make any money. I don't produce any, I don't have a career. And that's both great. It's a fantastic opportunity. And at times it feels like, a little scary. It's not just going to happen. It takes a tremendous amount of initiative. And by the way, I think that's one of the reasons I've enjoyed my work so much. But that to me is what, that is liberal arts in action. I mean, what are you doing in school? You're creating something every day. I mean, somebody is there to help you, but they don't give you the answers. You have to do the analysis. You have to ask the right questions. You have to go through sort of a very similar process. It's a very active process. I mean, it's a creative one, which I think is, it's fantastic in terms of satisfaction and fulfillment.
We've heard about the enduring values of liberal learning and how they frame the work that we do. It also frames social entrepreneurship, as it asks us to think about education as the process by which our students begin to deepen their connection to the world around them. And in fact, I would argue that the process of comprehending the profound connectivity of the individual self to all that lies outside of the self informs much of what we teach and how we teach it in our liberal arts colleges. And it's in this sense that our students learn to serve humanity.
It is particularly alarming that a Pew Research Center study found that a growing number of Republicans and Democrats view each other not just as the opposite party, but actually as a threat to our nation's well-being. It seems that we need to revise the old saying that familiarity breeds contempt, as the evidence mounts that unfamiliarity is the real culprit. In Congress and in our communities, we often speak of finding common ground when confronting divisive issues. That's awfully hard to do when the opposing sides don't even seem to be on the same planet. The humanities provide the common ground we need by connecting us to all times, to all places, and to each other.
We do live in a growing anti-intellectual environment, anti-fact environment. But, creating people who know how to think, who know how to sort of, separate the wheat from the chaff is a very important thing to be able to do. And it's increasingly important in the digital age where there's so much stuff out there that's not factual, that's not true, that's not rigorous. And, that's what you get at a liberal arts school, and that's particularly what you get in a small, intimate environment where you can create organizations, you can be a leader, you can interface with the administration, you can argue, you can protest, and you can still get an A. That's a pretty cool thing.
The historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, a Colby graduate, said that good leadership requires you to surround yourself with people of diverse perspectives who can disagree with you without fear of retaliation. That is the very definition of a rigorous liberal arts education, one that teaches us that differences are not to be feared but understood.
Where is the bottleneck? Where is the problem in communicating not just this data, but the reaffirmation that a liberal arts education can not just get you a job, but make you a better person?
Well, we were talking earlier about how we need to coin a phrase for liberal arts institutions and students that's similar, where you could say, oh, I have this craft, and it makes me very malleable, and it's a very transferable skill across many different jobs.
The world I grew up in, where nobody questioned the value of a liberal arts education, has dramatically changed to the point where it seems like everybody is questioning the value of a liberal arts education. And most of the answers they're coming up with are not particularly favorable. Sitting from my vantage point in the media, the stories I hear, the anecdotal information I hear, the misunderstandings, we all of us who believe deeply in this kind of education have a vast task in front of us. And I think you have absolutely identified most of the issues, and the facts are, I think, on our side, but we need more stories to get out there to refute these things.
There is growing recognition worldwide that the liberal arts are essential in developing whole persons, that we as individuals need and society requires to address complex problems and to progress. It's been interesting to note nations in Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore that have built advanced economies with an education system focused on specific job skills are now addressing their relative lack of Nobel laureates and lagging innovation by refocusing on the liberal arts. As one expert quoted in a story in Forbes said, Asia is discovering that there's benefit in the creativity and well-rounded perspective that comes from a liberal arts education.
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep inviting a very geographically, economically, racially diverse classes on your campus, because it's those little ripples that go out into the world, and some of them become, bloggers who found, billion-dollar companies, right? So and those people will tell your story, okay? They're not shy about saying, I found my way at Colby College. They're not shy about saying those kinds of things, and those are the best evangelists that you can have.